Well, let's have a look at the supplies you'll need should you attempt one of these jackets. We'll get to the fabrics in just a minute, but let's talk about all the other stuff that you'll need. You'll be doing basting, and I like to use the Japanese cotton. I think it has a nice grip with these fabrics. Back in the day, we always used to baste with silk, which is lovely, but it can get a bit lost in these very lofty fabrics, and you just don't always see it so well. So you get more of a chance of seeing it with Japanese cotton. And if you do use that, long needles are good. You can just get more mileage with them. You can just go a lot quicker with your basting. These are nice because a lot of times longer needles get so thin they arc, they bend too easily, and these don't. You'll need beeswax. You're going to be sewing the sleeves in by hand, and of course that needs to be really strong. And if you put beeswax on your thread and press it in to melt the beeswax into it, then it really becomes very, very strong. You're going to need a full pattern in muslin, a toile. Some places it's called calico. We call it unbleached muslin. So you're going to have to mark that with a tracing wheel and tracing paper, old school. And there's that chain at the bottom of the jacket. I think this one's about 1/4 of an inch wide. Nice weight, not too light, not too heavy. It usually comes in gold or silver. You will need, of course, trims and buttons. That's a whole other universe, but the buttons, you can have 6, you can have 8, you can have 10, you can have 12. They can be different sizes. Sometimes that's a decision that can be made a little further down the road when you have the whole scope of the jacket to look at. Same with the trim, and you'll need about 5 yards of it. This is just one that I'm using for another project, but you can see it's nice and substantial. It's got some volume to it, make a lovely statement. These are interesting, these forked pins. Very often with these fabrics, we've got a very tight match to be concerned about. And even when they're basted, fabrics can slip. The fibers can just kind of slip off each other. Well, I don't know why 2 pins that are joined hold better than 2 independent pins side by side, but these are extraordinary, these very, very sharp forked pins. I said we're going to talk about the fashion fabric, but charmeuse is a really beautiful lining to have. The jacket does close with hooks and eyes. I don't have a set here, but they're the jacket hooks and eyes that come in. I think we have them in gold, silver, gunmetal or something. And most of the metal you can see is out of sight, but a little bit of it does show through. So that's what you need there. And a pattern. I think this is a wonderful pattern. We had our pattern maker, Julian Christofoli, in Paris develop it, and this is the one that has that very beautiful, my goodness, it's a gorgeous 3-piece sleeve. And otherwise it's kind of a standard princess jacket. So that does it, I think, for the supplies. Oh yes, you will need a tiny bit of silk organza. At a certain point, we put a little bit of it into the upper parts of the side fronts and side backs just to give a little bit more strength to that area, because you do, after all, have a sleeve hanging off that. So just a little bit of silk organza to have on hand. And of course, matching thread. Students often ask me if I use silk thread. I don't for this, just the good domestic threads. Threads are fine, and sometimes, of course, you have to have different colors of threads. Remember, we're going to be doing this quilting, so if you had a black jacket with this on the inside, obviously your bobbin thread would have to be this color. Your fashion fabric thread would match your fashion fabric. So a couple of different thread colors. I think that's it. Most of this stuff we do carry on my website, really because it was a way for my students to get access to good products. Oh, one more thing. A beautiful hand sewing needle. You may have your favorite. There's a Japanese brand that I love. And also I like to use these glass-headed pins. They're wonderful. They're wonderfully strong. They're long enough. They're sharp. And when you're working with those very, very lofty fabrics, a headless pin sometimes sinks out of sight and you just don't see it. You're also going to be working with this beautiful charmeuse, and you don't want a thick pin that's going to shift the fabric around as you cram it in there. So you want a pin that glides in effortlessly into your fabric, and I think These Japanese glass-headed ones really do the job beautifully with that. Right, well, I'm going to put this all to one side, and now we're going to look at some gorgeous Winton fabrics.